A message carved in stone has waited for thousands of years, completely silent. Across the globe, there are ancient scripts and codes that remain unbroken today, defying every expert, every computer, and every clever mind that has tried to read them. By the end of this, you will know the stories of 20 of these enduring puzzles and understand why they hold the keys to lost chapters of human history. We will see a manuscript filled with impossible plants, wooden tablets from a remote island, and clay discs that might be the world's first printed words. What could these silent messages tell us about civilizations that vanished? What grand secrets are we missing because we cannot understand their words? How does it feel to look at writing and hear only silence? Our first stop is a civilization so advanced, its cities had grid-patterned streets and sophisticated plumbing over 4,000 years ago. The people of the Indus Valley, thriving in what is now Pakistan and northwest India, left behind a stunning legacy of artifacts. Among their most tantalizing creations are thousands of small stone seals, often featuring beautiful carvings of animals like bulls and unicorns. But above each image runs a line of elegant, unknown symbols. This is the Indus Valley Script, a writing system composed of more than 400 distinct signs. We have found it etched into pottery, stamped onto clay tags, and carved into tablets. It was clearly a vital part of their society, likely used in trade and administration. Yet for all its abundance, the script is completely mute to us today. The core of the problem is the lack of a bilingual text. We have no Indus equivalent of the Rosetta Stone, no single artifact that presents the same message in both this mysterious script and a language we already understand. This absence has led to fierce debates. Are these symbols a full language encoding the speech of a lost people? Or could they be a proto-writing system, conveying concepts or ownership without forming true sentences? Some even suggest they are non-linguistic, a complex set of clan symbols or religious sigils. The debate is heated because the stakes are so high. When the Indus civilization declined around 1900 BCE, its cultural and linguistic threads were severed. Without a key, the messages on these seals, which might detail laws, mythologies, or even the names of kings and gods, remain locked away. They are a ghost of a language, a reminder that an entire world of thought can dissolve into silence, leaving behind only beautiful, unreadable marks. While the Indus script whispers from the dawn of urban life, another book screams its mystery from the heart of the European Renaissance. The Voynich manuscript is a small, dense volume that feels like it was pulled from the shelf of a wizard's library. Created on fine vellum in the 15th century, its pages are a riot of the utterly inexplicable. You will find lush, full-color illustrations of plants that have never grown on this earth, their roots twisted and leaves oddly fleshy. You will see intricate astrological charts populated by unfamiliar constellations, and curious circular diagrams that seem to map unknown systems of knowledge. Most strikingly, there are pages showing groups of women, unclothed, bathing in or interacting with a network of vibrant green, tube-like structures that resemble both plumbing and living vines. And surrounding every image, flowing in neat lines from left to right, is the text. It is written in an elegant, looping script of unknown characters, with clear spaces between what appear to be words and sentences. The handwriting has the fluid confidence of a practiced scribe, someone who knew exactly what they were writing. This is not the shaky scrawl of a forger. For decades, top military and intelligence codebreakers, the very people who cracked complex wartime ciphers, have turned their skills to this book. They have applied every analytical tool. They have found that the text possesses a statistical structure eerily similar to a real language, with word lengths and character frequencies that follow natural patterns. Yet it resists all translation. It matches no known alphabet, no known cipher, no known language from any place or time. The theories are as wild as the illustrations. Is it a coded herbal preserving forbidden or alchemical knowledge? Is it a constructed language, a private fantasy of a medieval mind? Or, as some still argue, is it an immensely sophisticated, centuries-old hoax designed to baffle and deceive? The Voynich manuscript offers no answers, only an increasingly profound silence. It is the world's most beautiful locked book, and we have never found the key. It mocks our modern certainty, proving that a mystery can be perfectly preserved, perfectly detailed, and yet remain completely out of reach. The silence of a lost language feels even deeper when it is the only sound on a windswept, remote island. Far out in the Pacific, on the isolated shores of Rapa Nui, another script defies understanding. Known as Rongorongo, it is carved into 24 surviving wooden tablets and a handful of ceremonial objects. The glyphs themselves are a captivating puzzle, resembling stylized birds, human figures, plants, and geometric shapes, all flowing together in a continuous line. But the method of reading them is just as unique as the symbols. The text is written in what scholars call reverse boustrafeden. Imagine a farmer plowing a field. You read one line left to right, but when you reach the end, instead of returning to the left margin to start the next line, you physically turn the entire tablet upside down. Now the next line of glyphs is also read left to right, but they are oriented completely opposite to the line you just finished. It is a dizzying, beautiful, and incredibly deliberate way to record information. These tablets were discovered by outsiders in the 19th century, but by then it was already too late. The island had suffered profound hardship through introduced illness and conflict. The last individuals who were known to understand and chant the Rongorongo texts had passed away or been taken from the island in the 1860s. In a single generation, the living thread of knowledge was severed. Today, researchers are left with the physical artifacts but no native voice to bring them to life. This loss sparks a fundamental debate. Was Rongorongo a true writing system, encoding the Rapa Nui language into permanent form? Or was it a sophisticated mnemonic device, a set of prompts to guide a trained reciter through genealogies, creation chants, or navigational lore? Without a key, we cannot be sure. The isolation that shaped this remarkable culture also sealed the fate of its script. Rongorongo stands as a silent testament to intellectual achievement, a reminder of how fragile human memory can be, and how an entire world of thought can become locked within symbols we see but cannot hear. Even as the people of Rapa Nui carved their history into wood, a far older form of record-keeping was being pressed into clay half a world away. In the ancient lands of what is now Iran, a civilization known as Elam was developing one of humanity's first experiments with writing. The Proto-Elamite script emerged around 3,100 years before the Common Era, making it a contemporary of, and possibly even predating, the earliest known cuneiform from neighboring Mesopotamia. This is not just an old puzzle, it is a foundational one, born from the very moment human societies grew complex enough to need a permanent accounting of their wealth. The surviving artifacts are humble, practical objects. They are small clay tablets, often no larger than a palm, imprinted with a sharp stylus. The markings are a mix of clear numerical signs, like circles and semicircles representing quantities, and more abstract pictorial symbols. These signs likely stood for commodities, things like grain, livestock, or vessels of oil. Think of them as the world's first spreadsheets, created not by accountants in offices, but by administrators in the world's earliest proto-cities, tasked with tracking the flow of resources that made communal life possible. Yet, for all its apparent simplicity, this script guards its secrets fiercely. After a few centuries of use, it was simply abandoned. The civilization transitioned to a later writing system called Linear Elamite, which we can only read in fragments. The Proto-Elamite script fell into complete silence. The central challenge for decipherers today is twofold. First, we have a very limited number of texts, perhaps only around 1,600 tablets, and many are short or damaged. Second, and more critically, we have no idea what language these signs were meant to represent. Without knowing the underlying tongue, the symbols are just mute pictures. Were they logographic, where one sign equals one word, or were they syllabic, representing sounds? We cannot even be sure. Decoding this system would be a monumental key to a lost world. It would not reveal epic poetry or royal decrees, at least not at first. Instead, it would open a window directly into the economic engine of early civilization. We could understand how these first states managed surplus, organized labor, and conducted trade across the rugged Iranian plateau. It would show us the birth of bureaucracy, the moment abstract thought was first used to control the physical world. Each small tablet is a fossil of a cognitive revolution, a puzzle buried in the dust of millennia, waiting to tell us how we first began to count our world, and in doing so, invented the very concept of recorded history. But the drive to record our world on clay was not unique to the dusty plains of the ancient Near East. 1,000 years after the Proto-Elamite script fell silent, a very different civilization was etching its own accounts into sun-baked tablets on an island in the Aegean Sea. This was the world of the Minoans, a people whose culture centered on the island of Crete long before the rise of classical Greece. Their society was a marvel of its age, renowned for sprawling, labyrinthine palaces adorned with vibrant frescoes of leaping dolphins and elegant courtiers. They are often remembered as a largely peaceful, trade-focused civilization with a deep reverence for the natural world, particularly the bull, which featured prominently in their art and likely their ceremonial practices. Unlike any complex society, they needed to keep records. For this, they developed a script we call Linear A, found inscribed on clay tablets, stone libation tables, and religious offerings. Linear A is the written voice of this magnificent Bronze Age culture. The script itself is a series of neat, linear strokes and stylized pictograms pressed into clay with a sharp tool. For decades, it was an impenetrable mystery. Then, in the early 20th century, archaeologists made a thrilling discovery at the site of Knossos, the great Minoan palace. They unearthed a different set of tablets written in a strikingly similar script. This one, however, was eventually cracked. It was named Linear B, and it turned out to be an early form of Greek, used by the later Mycenaeans who came to dominate the region. The decipherment of Linear B was a triumph, but it only deepened the mystery of Linear A. Scholars could see that the two scripts shared many of the same signs. They clearly had a historical relationship, like two branches of the same family tree. But here was the crucial, frustrating difference. While the signs in Linear B represented the sounds of the Greek language, those same signs in Linear A were being used to write something entirely different. It was as if someone gave you a key to a Spanish lock, only to find it fit perfectly into the keyhole of a French door but would not turn. The underlying language of Linear A, the true Minoan tongue, remained, and remains locked away. The tablets themselves offer tantalizing clues. Their format is largely administrative, listing commodities like figs, olives, wine, and textiles, often with numerical counts. We can see the shape of their economy, the inventory of their storerooms. We can even guess that a certain sign cluster might mean olive oil, because it appears in context similar to where olive oil appears in Linear B. But we cannot sound out the Minoan word for it. We do not know how they spoke, what they called their gods, or how they named their majestic palaces. Their language appears unrelated to any known family, a linguistic island as isolated as Crete itself. So we are left with a haunting duality. We can walk through the ruins of their grand architecture, admire the fluid beauty of their art, and sense the sophistication of their society. Yet their own words, the very medium of their daily life, ritual and governance, are silent. Linear is a ghost in the archaeological record, a visible breath of a civilization that left no spoken echo. We can see their voice preserved in meticulous lines on clay, but we have not yet learned how to hear it. But before the neat lines of Linear A, the Minoans were already experimenting with a more visual form of record-keeping. Even older and far more enigmatic are the Cretan Hieroglyphs. This script, used on the island between 2100 and 1700 years before the Common Era, is a world of tiny, intricate pictures carved into soft clay or stone. The name is a bit of a misnomer, for these symbols share only a basic idea with the grand hieroglyphs of Egypt. They are a completely independent creation, a local solution to the problem of making a mark that means something. You will find small, elegant depictions of birds in flight, flowers with delicate petals, vessels, tools, and human faces. Each is a miniature work of art, but one intended for a practical purpose. Most of these glyphs have been found on small, rounded seals and on flat clay bars, objects meant to be pressed into wet clay to leave an identifying impression. This suggests their primary role was administrative or ceremonial, perhaps marking ownership, authenticating a transaction, or sealing a storage jar. With only about 150 distinct signs, the system is too limited to be a full written language capable of expressing complex narratives. This scarcity is the heart of the mystery. Were the Cretan hieroglyphs a true, if early, writing system where a sequence of pictures could convey a specific phrase like "belongs to the priest of the dove goddess"? Or were they a sophisticated form of proto-writing where a single glyph, like a bird or a flower, stood not for a sound but for an entire concept, a family lineage or a type of offering? The evidence we have is frustratingly sparse. We lack any lengthy text, any clay tablet covered in lines of these symbols that could reveal their grammatical structure. We have only fragments, brief clusters of glyphs that seem to whisper rather than speak. This makes decipherment a task of monumental difficulty. Without more data, statistical analysis is nearly impossible, and comparisons to later scripts like Linear provide only faint, speculative echoes. What these silent symbols do tell us, however, is profoundly important. They represent the first flowering of written expression in the Aegean world. They show a society at the very cusp of a cognitive leap, playing with the idea that a mark in clay could hold meaning beyond a simple picture. The path to writing was not a straight, inevitable line from picture to alphabet. It was a maze of experimentation, full of dead ends and local innovations. The Cretan hieroglyphs are one of those fascinating, cryptic byways. They are the precursor, the first draft of an idea that would later evolve into the more systematic Linear A. They remind us that every great script began as a tentative mark, a puzzle its own creators understood perfectly, but which to us millennia later remains a beautiful and silent question. The urge to make a permanent mark, to fix thought in stone, seems to be a universal human impulse. Across the Atlantic, in the lush, humid lowlands of what is now southern Mexico, another civilization was reaching the same profound milestone entirely on its own. This was the world of the Olmec, a culture so foundational to the region that scholars often call it the mother culture of Mesoamerica. They are famous for their staggering artistic legacy, particularly the colossal stone heads, each weighing many tons and carved with such individuality that they are believed to be portraits of powerful rulers. These heads alone speak of a society with immense organizational skill, sophisticated artistry, and deep social hierarchy. But did they also possess the ultimate tool of complex society, a true writing system? For a long time, the answer seemed to be a tentative no. the Olmec appeared to be a pre-literate culture, expressing their world through powerful symbols in art, but not through written words. Then, in the late 1990s, a discovery shook that assumption. Workers at a gravel quarry in the state of Veracruz unearthed a rectangular block of serpentine stone, now known as the Cascajal block. On its surface, carefully inscribed, were 62 distinct symbols arranged in clear, horizontal lines. This was not random decoration. The symbols showed repetition, variation, and a deliberate layout that strongly suggested a sequence meant to be read. It was a text. Dating suggests this block may be from as early as 900 years before the Common Era, which would make it the oldest candidate for writing in the entire Americas. The symbols themselves are a world apart from the intricate, boxy glyphs of the later Maya. They are more fluid and pictorial, featuring shapes like insects, ears of corn, thrones, and abstract patterns. They appear to be a unique local invention, a script born from Olmec thought to serve Olmec needs, and therein lies both the immense promise and the heartbreaking frustration. The Cascajal block is so far almost alone. We have a handful of other artifacts with possible glyphs, like a cylinder seal and a few carved celts, but nothing that provides a substantial corpus of text. This extreme scarcity makes the task of decipherment, for now, a practical impossibility. Without more examples, we cannot find patterns, we cannot match symbols to concepts, and we cannot begin to reconstruct the language they likely represent. It is like having a single, beautiful page from a vast and unknown library. We can see that it is written, we can admire the handwriting, but we have no other pages to tell us the story. The potential loss is immense. If we could read this script, it would not just add footnotes to Olmec history, it would open the first chapter. We could move beyond interpreting their stunning art and architecture and finally hear their own voice. We might learn the names they gave to those colossal heads, understand the myths that justified their rulers' power, and see the administrative records that managed their society. It would reveal the intellectual bedrock upon which all later Mesoamerican cultures, like the Maya and the Aztec, were eventually built. The Olmec script remains a profound whisper from the dawn of American civilization, a single page that hints at a whole lost volume of human experience, waiting in the silence for another page to be found. Sometimes a mystery is not found in a grand library or a royal tomb, but in the quiet darkness of a cave, in the rugged terrain of Bulgaria, hidden within a cavern known as Sitovo. A short line of cryptic symbols is carved directly into the stone wall. This is the Satovo Inscription, a sequence of just 8 or 9 unusual, angular characters that look like runes from a forgotten alphabet. Since its discovery in the early 20th century, this brief message has stood as a perfect example of a cryptographic dead end, a puzzle with almost none of the pieces needed to solve it. The first and most profound challenge is its age. Without any surrounding artifacts or clear historical context, dating the inscription is guesswork. Some scholars propose it could be medieval, perhaps linked to the Proto-Bulgarian runes used by early settlers in the region. Others see a resemblance to the Glagolitic alphabet, the oldest known Slavic script created by Saints Cyril and Methodius. A more speculative theory even pushes its origin back to antiquity, suggesting a connection to the ancient Thracians who once inhabited these lands. Each theory paints a completely different picture of the hand that carved it. Was it a medieval traveler marking a trail, a monk practicing a sacred script in solitude, or a Thracian initiate leaving a ritual sign? The characters themselves offer no clear answer. They are isolated and unique, not matching any known script perfectly. This has led to other, more exotic interpretations. Could it be a cipher, a secret code meant for the eyes of only a select few? Or perhaps it is not writing at all, but a set of property marks or Masonic symbols from a later period. The frustrating truth is that with such a short text, statistical analysis is impossible. There are no repeating phrases to analyze, no grammatical patterns to discern. It is a linguistic snapshot of a single, frozen moment. This profound isolation is what makes the Satovo inscription so haunting. It is not part of a corpus or a culture's written tradition. It is a solitary statement. Someone went to significant effort to climb into that cave and deliberately carve those specific marks into enduring stone. They had a reason, they had a message. That intent is palpable, hanging in the air of the cavern, yet the meaning has evaporated from history. It proves that a mystery does not need volume to be profound. A single line of unknown symbols can hold the weight of an entire lost conversation, a personal declaration, or a warning we can no longer heed. It is a whisper on stone, a reminder that not all voices from the past speak in paragraphs. Some speak in a single, unbreakable sentence. The most profound discoveries are often the most fragile. A simple wooden tablet, resting in the mud at the bottom of a Neolithic lake in northern Greece, holds a claim that could rewrite history. Known as the Dispilio tablet, this piece of wood was carbon dated to around 5,260 years before the Common Era. That is a staggering date. It places this object in a lakeside village over 7,000 years ago, a time when human societies in Europe were just beginning to settle into farming communities. The tablet itself is unassuming, a flat piece of wood with a series of linear, angular symbols carefully engraved onto its surface. These are not pictures of animals or people. They are abstract marks, lines and shapes arranged in a deliberate sequence that looks, for all the world, like a line of script. Its preservation is nothing short of a miracle. Wood normally rots away in a matter of centuries, but the oxygen-free mud of the lakebed sealed it in a time capsule, protecting it for millennia until its discovery in the 1990s. This is where the controversy ignites. The symbols on the Dispilio tablet do not match any known writing system from any era. They are entirely unique. So what are we looking at? The academic debate is intense and deeply consequential. Many scholars urge extreme caution. They suggest the marks could be a form of proto-writing, perhaps ownership symbols for tools or grain stores, or even an elaborate decorative pattern with no linguistic meaning at all. Without more examples, they argue, we cannot call it writing, but other researchers look at those neat, sequential engravings and see something more. They argue that the arrangement is too structured, too intentional to be mere decoration. They propose it could represent a genuine, localized symbolic communication system, a way for this specific lakeside community to record information. If this interpretation is correct, the implications are earth-shaking. It would mean that the human impulse to move beyond spoken word, to fix meaning into a permanent, visual form, began not in the great river valleys of Mesopotamia or Egypt around 3000 BC, but thousands of years earlier and in a completely different part of the world. The Dispilio tablet does not just present a puzzle, it challenges a fundamental pillar of our historical narrative. It whispers a tantalizing possibility that the invention of writing was not a single, brilliant flash in one cradle of civilization, but a slow-burning idea that could have flickered to life independently in many places, only for most of those early experiments to vanish without a trace, lost to time and decay. This humble piece of wood asks us a profound question. What if our timeline is wrong? What if the story of human expression is far older and far more mysterious than the history books have ever dared to suggest? Buried within the ruins of a Minoan palace, a single clay object stands apart from everything else ever found. The Phaistos Disc, unearthed in a storage room of the ancient Cretan palace of Phaistos in 1908, is a perfect circle of fired clay about the diameter of a small plate. Its surface is a mesmerizing puzzle, covered on both sides with a continuous spiral of 241 tiny, detailed pictures. These are not carved or drawn. Each symbol depicting a helmeted head, a ship, a bird in flight, a bee, or a flowering plant, was pressed into the soft clay with a pre-made stamp. This single fact makes the disc a technological marvel centuries ahead of its time, an ancient experiment with the principle of movable type printing. Someone over 3,500 years ago had a set of 45 distinct stamps and used them to compose this message. But what message? The symbols march in neat groups along the spiral path, separated by short vertical lines, clearly forming what look like words or phrases. The arrangement is deliberate, the product of a thinking mind. Yet from the moment it was found, the disc existed in utter isolation. No other stamped object from the Minoan world has ever been discovered. No other text uses this exact set of symbols. It is a one-of-a-kind artifact, a solitary statement with no dictionary, no parallel, and no context. This profound loneliness is the core of the mystery. Without more examples, decipherment is a game of infinite speculation. Does the spiral tell a religious hymn to a forgotten goddess? Is it a legal code, a treaty between kingdoms, or perhaps a royal proclamation? Some have even suggested it is not a document at all, but an ancient board game, its spiral path a track for pieces. Each theory is compelling, yet each is ultimately unprovable. The disc refuses to give up its secret. It represents a flash of individual genius, a scribe or inventor who conceived of a new way to record information, only for that idea to apparently die with them. It is a locked safe with no combination, a beautiful, spinning question mark from the heart of a lost civilization. We can admire its craftsmanship, we can analyze the frequency of its symbols, but we cannot hear the voice that spoke through those stamps. It remains a closed book, written in a language of pictures we see but cannot read, a solitary masterpiece whispering from the dawn of recorded thought. While the Phaistos Disc spins its solitary mystery from the Bronze Age, a far more recent book weaves a tapestry of faith and secrecy. In a library in the Hungarian town of Rohonc, a small, handwritten volume has baffled scholars for over 2 centuries. Known as the Rohonc Codex, it is a manuscript of nearly 500 pages, filled edge to edge with a flowing, unknown script. Unlike ancient artifacts worn by time, this book was created on relatively modern paper, likely in the 16th or 17th century. Its very existence is a provocation, a fully formed written language that appears from nowhere and leads to nothing. The script itself is composed of around 200 distinct, elegant symbols. Some look vaguely like distorted Latin or Greek letters, while others resemble runic strokes or simple geometric shapes. They are arranged in neat lines with clear word breaks and punctuation, following all the visual rules of a real written text. Yet it matches no known alphabet, living or dead. For code breakers, this presents a unique torment. The text's internal structure is bizarre. Statistical analysis reveals patterns that seem to flip between the logical consistency of a human language and the chaotic randomness of gibberish. It is as if the rules of grammar and syntax are constantly shifting, defying every tool developed to crack ciphers from the Renaissance to the modern computer age. The mystery deepens with the illustrations scattered throughout its pages. These delicate drawings are a jarring fusion of religious iconography. You will see unmistakable Christian scenes of the crucifixion alongside symbols that evoke Ottoman Turkish motifs and imagery that hints at pagan or solar worship. It is a visual echo of the turbulent, multicultural world of early modern Central Europe, where faiths and empires collided and coexisted. This chaotic blend is the heart of the Codex's enduring riddle. Who created this, and why would they go to such extraordinary lengths? One compelling theory is that it is an elaborate fabrication, a beautiful but meaningless hoax designed to deceive collectors or perhaps to practice the art of forgery. Yet the sheer volume of consistent text argues against a simple prank. The more haunting possibility is that it is genuine, a deliberate act of cryptographic concealment. In an era of religious wars and inquisitions, Heretical groups or persecuted mystics often communicated in secret codes to protect their ideas. The Rohonc Codex could be a theological treatise, a book of forbidden rituals, or a syncretic blending of beliefs, locked away in a language of one's own invention. Its creator succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. The book is a perfect fortress of silence. It represents a profound human impulse not just to communicate, but to hide, to share secrets with a chosen few while locking out the rest of the world. We hold the keyhole in our hands, but the key was thrown away centuries ago, leaving us to wonder what dangerous or beautiful thoughts demanded such absolute secrecy. Even the mightiest monuments can be silenced by a single blast of gunpowder. At the mouth of the Singapore River, a large sandstone slab once stood as a sentinel for centuries of passing ships. This was the Singapore Stone, a monolith covered in a flowing, elegant script, a public declaration carved for a bustling port city over 1,000 years ago. Today, we know of it only through a few heartbreaking fragments. The story of its loss is as significant as the mystery of its message. In the early 19th century, as British colonial authorities expanded the river mouth, they saw the massive stone not as a treasure but as an obstacle. In 1843, they made the irreversible decision to blast it apart with explosives. Only a few broken pieces were saved, the largest of which now sits in the Singapore National Museum. The inscription on these fragments is beautiful and utterly unknown. The script, possibly dating from the 10th to the 13th centuries, features characters that curve and flow with a distinct artistic style. Experts have proposed links to Old Javanese or Sanskrit, languages of the powerful maritime kingdoms like Srivijaya that once dominated these strategic straits. But the text is too short, too damaged to allow for a certain match. It could just as easily be a completely unknown language, a local tongue of a forgotten trading polity. This physical destruction transformed a monumental clue into a permanent puzzle. The surviving fragments are like a single torn page from a vast historical novel. We can see the handwriting, we can admire its style, but we will never know the full story it was telling. Was it a declaration of port laws, a tribute to a seafaring king? A prayer to the gods for safe passage? The stone's silence is a man-made tragedy, a stark reminder that the past is not just eroded by time, it can be willfully shattered. It stands as a poignant symbol for all the artifacts lost to conflict, neglect, or progress, each one a potential key to a lost world now ground to dust. The Singapore Stone whispers a crucial lesson that every act of preservation is a defense against a deeper kind of oblivion, where history is not just forgotten but physically erased. The story of our alphabet is a grand inheritance, a chain of ideas passed from one civilization to the next. But every chain has its missing links, and one of the most crucial may rest in fragments along the Lebanese coast. In the ancient port city of Byblos, a center for the trade of precious papyrus, a series of mysterious inscriptions were unearthed. Known as the Byblos Syllabary, these texts are carved on bronze spatulas and stone, dating back over 3,500 years. The script itself is a fascinating hybrid. You can see the clear influence of Egyptian hieroglyphs in the shapes of the signs, echoes of that powerful neighboring culture. Yet the system is something entirely new and distinct. Experts believe it is a syllabary where each sign does not represent a single letter, but an entire syllable like ba or lai. This places it at a pivotal evolutionary moment, a bridge between the complex picture writing of Egypt and the simpler, more versatile alphabets that would later emerge. But the bridge is broken. We have only a handful of these texts, and each one is frustratingly short. Imagine trying to learn English from just a few random sentences on a handful of broken plates. You might recognize a pattern or two, but you could never grasp the full language. That is the precise problem facing anyone who tries to crack the Byblos Syllabary. There is simply not enough material for the statistical tools of modern decipherment to find a reliable foothold. The script remains a collection of beautiful, silent syllables. Yet the potential reward for breaking that silence is immense. Byblos was a Canaanite city, and the language hidden in these signs is almost certainly an early form of the Canaanite languages spoken across the ancient Levant. Deciphering this script would give us a direct, unfiltered voice from that world, long before the famous Phoenician alphabet spread across the Mediterranean. It could show us the exact moment of innovation when scribes began to simplify and adapt, taking the building blocks of one writing tradition to forge the foundations of another. This is not just about translating a few ancient spatulas. It is about finding a lost chapter in the biography of our own ABCs. Each unreadable mark on those bronze fragments is a potential step in the journey that led to the letters you are reading right now. It is a ghost in the machine of history, a silent witness to one of humanity's greatest intellectual revolutions waiting for a voice. While the Olmec script whispers from the very dawn, a later and more complex voice emerged from the same fertile ground. In the narrow waste of southern Mexico, the Isthmus of Tehuantepec, a writing system flourished for 1,000 years, carving its stories into massive stone monuments. Known today as the Isthmian or Epi-Olmec script, it is a bridge between worlds, a sophisticated code that may hold the key to a lost chapter of Mesoamerican thought. Its most famous testament is the La Mojara Stela, a towering slab of stone weighing over 4 tons. On its surface, beneath the carved image of an elaborately dressed ruler, runs a column of over 500 intricate glyphs. This is not a short label or a simple list. This is a dense, lengthy narrative, a historical record waiting to be read. The very existence of such a text tells us this was no primitive marking system, but a fully developed script capable of recording the complexities of politics, genealogy, and ceremony for a powerful civilization. The glyphs themselves are a beautiful and daunting puzzle. They are a complex fusion of different types of signs. Some are clearly logograms, whole pictures that represent an entire word or idea, like a jaguar head for the concept of power or a mountain for a place. Intermixed with these are smaller, more abstract signs that scholars believe represent syllables, the phonetic building blocks of spoken language. This mix is what makes the script so powerful and so difficult. It is like a text where some words are written out in letters, while others are replaced by emojis, and the reader must intuitively know when to sound something out and when to simply recognize the symbol. This is precisely the kind of system the ancient Egyptians used with their hieroglyphs, and it represents a high point of scribble innovation. For decades, the La Mojara Stela and a handful of other inscriptions stood in magnificent silence. Then, in the 1990s, a breakthrough was proposed. A team of researchers led by the late John Justison and Terence Kaufman argued they had found the key. They proposed that the language behind the script was an early form of the Zoquian languages, spoken in the region long before the rise of the Maya. Their decipherment suggested the stela told the story of a ruler named Harvest Mountain Lord, detailing his ascent, a rebellion, and his eventual victory. It was a thrilling narrative pulled from stone, yet the academic world did not embrace it with open arms. The proposed decipherment remains hotly controversial. The main issue is the limited evidence. With only a few major inscriptions to study, it is incredibly difficult to prove a decipherment beyond a reasonable doubt. Other scholars question the linguistic links or the interpretation of specific signs. Without a bilingual text, a Rosetta Stone for Mesoamerica, the debate sits at an impasse. This controversy, however, does not diminish the script's profound significance. Whether fully deciphered or not, the Isthmian script stands as a monumental achievement. It represents a parallel stream of intellectual history, a writing tradition that developed independently in the Isthmus region, contemporary with the early Maya glyphs to the east. It shows us that the impulse to record history in permanent form was not a Maya monopoly, but a widespread cultural force across ancient Mexico. Each unread glyph on the La Majora Stela is a potential sentence in a grand, regional epic we have only begun to piece together, a reminder that even when we find a voice from the past, learning its language can be the greatest challenge of all. Deep in the soft soil of the Yellow River Valley, a discovery was made that would send a quiet tremor through the study of human language. At the Neolithic site of Jiahu, archaeologists unearthed something extraordinary, not within a grand tomb, but among the simple resting places of a community that thrived over 8,000 years ago. Here, nestled alongside the remains, were tortoise shells and animal bones, and on their surfaces, someone had carefully carved a series of markings. These are the Jiahu symbols, and they are astonishingly old, dating from around 6,600 to 6,200 years before the Common Era. To grasp that timeline, consider this: these marks were made thousands of years before the first pyramids of Egypt were even a concept, in a world where human society was still in its formative chapters. The symbols themselves are simple yet profoundly evocative. There are crosses, lines, and shapes that look like eyes or primitive numerals, but among them are a few that make a historian's breath catch. One symbol, for instance, looks unmistakably like the ancient Chinese character for eye. Another bears a striking resemblance to the character for sun. The similarity is not a vague hint. It is a direct visual echo across an unimaginable gulf of time. It feels as if we are looking at a distant ancestor in a faded family portrait, recognizing the features of a grandchild not yet born. This resemblance sparks the central, heated debate that surrounds these artifacts. What exactly are we seeing? Are these marks a true form of proto-writing, a structured attempt to convey specific meanings, perhaps even sounds, that would one day evolve into the full Chinese script? Or are they something more personal and less linguistic, like ownership marks denoting a clan or an individual, or ritual symbols used in ceremonial practices? The evidence as it stands is deeply frustrating for anyone seeking a clear answer. The symbols appear alone or in very short groups. There is no continuous text, no sentence to analyze, no grammatical structure to discern. They are isolated signs, like single words scattered from a book that has long since turned to dust. This lack of context is the great wall that stands between the symbols and any certain decipherment. If they are indeed a nascent writing system, the implications are staggering. It would mean the intellectual journey toward Chinese characters, one of the world's most enduring and complex scripts, began not with the oracle bones of the Shang dynasty 3,000 years later, but in the dim, prehistoric light of a Neolithic village, pushing the origins back by millennia. It suggests a slow, organic evolution of symbolic thought, a cultural seed planted in the distant past that took thousands of years to finally blossom. The Jiahu symbols do not shout a message to us. They whisper from the very edge of prehistory, sitting in that hazy dawn where picture becomes symbol, and symbol teeters on the brink of becoming word. They represent a possibility, a tantalizing hint that the human desire to fix meaning into a permanent form is far older and far more patient than we ever realized. They are not a locked book, but perhaps the very first marks on the first page of a story that would one day fill libraries. A civilization can speak in threads as eloquently as in stone. High in the Andes, the Inca Empire managed one of the largest and most organized societies in the ancient world without a single sheet of paper or a carved glyph. Their tool was the Quipu, a deceptively simple device of knotted strings. At first glance, it might resemble a complex tassel or an intricate piece of textile art. But to the Inca, it was their library, their ledger, and possibly their chronicle. Each quipu consisted of a main horizontal cord from which dozens, sometimes hundreds, of pendant strings were suspended. The genius of the system lay in its variables. A record keeper, known as a quipukamayok, would use different colors of string, various types of knots, and specific placements along the cord to encode information. The position of a knot could indicate units, tens, hundreds, or thousands. The type of knot, whether a simple overhand knot or a complex figure 8, denoted different values. This made the quipu an extraordinarily efficient tool for numerical accounting, tracking everything from population census data and tax obligations to astronomical cycles and agricultural yields across an empire that stretched for thousands of miles. For a long time, scholars believed that was its sole purpose, a three-dimensional abacus, but a growing body of research suggests the quipu was capable of so much more. The choice of color was not arbitrary. In Andean cosmology, colors held deep symbolic meaning, representing elements, deities, or regions. The specific spin or ply of the cotton or alpaca fiber, the direction a knot was tied, even the spatial relationship between knots on different strings may have conveyed qualitative information. Could a specific sequence of crimson and gold knots, tied in a certain order, tell the story of an emperor's coronation? Could a complex arrangement of knots record a legal testimony, a hymn to the sun god, or a genealogy? Many researchers now believe the answer is yes, that the quipu was a true writing system, but one expressed in a tactile, multidimensional language of fiber, a form of writing you could feel in your hands. The tragic silence that surrounds the quipu today stems from a profound cultural rupture. When Spanish forces arrived in the 16th century, they systematically dismantled the Inca administrative state. They viewed the quipus with deep suspicion, often condemning them as idolatrous objects or tools of a pagan bureaucracy and ordering them destroyed. More devastating than the physical loss, however, was the loss of the living minds that could read them. The quipukamayaks, the trained record keepers who spent their lives learning this tactile language, were displaced, or their knowledge was not passed on. The specific code for translating knots into narrative died with them. Today, scholars are left with about 1,000 surviving quipus, most from later periods or out of their original context. They can decode the numbers, but the stories, the laws, the poems, if they were ever there, remain locked within the intricate patterns. Deciphering this full language would be more than a translation exercise. It would be an act of recovering an entire way of thinking. It would allow us to hear the Inca Empire speak in its own voice, not through the filter of Spanish chroniclers, but through the direct, tactile records they left behind. Each knot is a potential word, each color a potential adjective, waiting in the quiet hope that one day we might learn to read a story told not with ink, but with string. The desire to find the very first written word can sometimes lead us to see messages in the marks of ritual. In the rolling hills of Transylvania, a discovery was made that would ignite one of archaeology's most heated and enduring controversies. During excavations of a Neolithic settlement near the village of Tărtăria in 1961, archaeologists unearthed 3 small, fired clay tablets. 2 were round, 1 was rectangular, and each was covered in a series of incised symbols. One symbol in particular caught the world's attention, a carefully etched shape resembling a swastika, an ancient symbol found across many cultures representing the sun, fortune, or cyclical time. Alongside it were other linear marks, dots, and a crude stick figure. On their own, these objects might have been catalogued as fascinating ritual items. But then came the proposed date. Based on their stratigraphic layer and associated artifacts, some researchers suggested these tablets could be from around 5,300 years before the Common Era. If true, that would make them centuries older than the earliest known Mesopotamian cuneiform, and millennia older than the Dispilio tablet. The claim was explosive. that these could be the oldest writing in the world, a script born not in the famed cradles of civilization, but in prehistoric Southeast Europe. The academic response was swift and deeply skeptical. Mainstream archaeology pointed out the severe problems with this interpretation. The tablets were found in a pit with burned bones, a context that strongly suggests a ceremonial or funerary purpose, not an administrative one. The symbols are few and isolated, with no evidence of the repetitive, structured sequences we see in true writing systems. Most experts concluded the marks were likely personal or clan symbols, ritual sigils, or decorative patterns, perhaps denoting the status or beliefs of the individual with whom they were buried. They were a form of symbolic expression, a powerful and meaningful human act, but not a vehicle for recording language. The debate, however, quickly spilled beyond academic journals. The Tărtăria tablets became a potent symbol in nationalist narratives, held up as proof of a glorious, autonomous cultural dawn in the region, independent of influences from the East. This passion clouded objective analysis, turning archaeological interpretation into a battleground of identity. Today, the tablets sit in a quiet limbo. Their actual age is still contested, with some later analyses suggesting they might be younger. Their meaning remains opaque. They serve as a profound cautionary tale, reminding us of the powerful temptation to project our deepest desires onto the silent past. We long for a clear lineage, a neat story of origins. The Tărtăria tablets represent the thrilling possibility of such a story, but also the danger of believing it too easily. They force us to ask a difficult question: where do we draw the line between a symbol that holds meaning and a symbol that records speech? It is a line as faint as the scratches on a piece of ancient clay, and respecting its ambiguity is sometimes the most honest way to honor the complexity of the human mind. The silence of the Rongorongo tablets is not an ancient mystery, but a modern tragedy. To understand why these wooden texts remain unbroken, we must listen to the devastating story of the society that created them. The remote island of Rapa Nui, often called Easter Island, was once a thriving Polynesian culture, a testament to human ingenuity in one of the most isolated places on Earth. Its people navigated vast ocean distances, erected the iconic moai statues with remarkable skill, and developed their own unique script. Yet, in the span of just a few generations, this intricate cultural world was shattered. Scholars point to a confluence of crushing forces. The island's fragile ecosystem faced significant strain, likely impacting the community's foundation. Then came the external blows. In the 1860s, Peruvian slave raiders descended upon the island, forcibly removing over 1,000 individuals, including the paramount chief and his sons, the very people who would have been the guardians of sacred knowledge. This was followed by the introduction of unfamiliar illnesses, against which the isolated population had no defense. The social fabric, already under pressure, unraveled completely. The living chain of transmission was severed. The last known individuals trained to read and chant the Rongorongo texts passed away without successors, taking the key to the script with them. This was not a slow fading of memory over millennia, but a violent cultural amnesia inflicted within a single lifetime. The loss transforms Rongorongo from a simple puzzle into a profound symbol. It represents an entire library of knowledge, genealogies, creation chants, navigational lore, and historical records that was deliberately and systematically erased from human memory. Today, researchers work with fragments of hope. They perform statistical analyses on the glyphs, searching for positional patterns that might hint at grammatical structure. They compare the stylized symbols with other Polynesian traditions, looking for shared motifs that could point to common myths or calendrical systems. Some note that certain sequences of glyphs might align with known lunar calendars or the structured lists of ancestors preserved in later oral histories. Yet, without a living voice to confirm these connections, every theory remains a shadow on the cave wall. The story of Rongorongo, therefore, is about more than an unbroken code. It is a stark lesson in fragility. It shows how historical forces, both environmental and human, can silence a civilization's voice with terrifying speed. Each unreadable glyph is a monument to resilience, yes, but also to a catastrophe that reminds us how much of the human story is written not in stone, but in memory, and how easily that story can be lost forever when the storytellers are gone. The silence of these ancient scripts is not for a lack of trying. We have thrown our most powerful modern tools at them, supercomputers and artificial intelligence algorithms capable of modeling the cosmos, and still they hold their ground. Why is that? The answer lies in the fundamental mechanics of decipherment itself. Modern code breaking is a science of patterns. It looks for the frequency of certain symbols, the way they cluster together, and how they behave at the beginnings or ends of words. These statistical fingerprints can reveal whether a symbol represents a vowel or a consonant, or if a script is alphabetic, syllabic, or logographic. But this entire method has one non-negotiable prerequisite: a large body of text to analyze. For many of these ancient scripts, that is the very thing we lack. The Byblos Syllabary, the Satovo Inscription, the Jiahu symbols, they offer us only fragments, whispers too brief to establish a reliable pattern. It is like trying to understand the rules of a language from a single, torn paragraph. The computer has nothing to count, no recurring structures to map, and so it falls silent. The challenge deepens when the language itself is a ghost. Even if we had a mountain of text in the Indus Valley script, for instance, we would face a second, perhaps greater wall. Our decipherment techniques often work by building bridges from the unknown to the known. We might guess that a certain symbol represents a king because it appears next to a carved image of a throne. But if the underlying language spoken by the Indus people died out without a trace, unrelated to any tongue we have today, then we have no linguistic anchor. There is no living sister language to compare it to, no grammatical structure to hypothesize. We cannot sound out the symbols because we have no idea what sounds they might make. In this void, even the most powerful computational model can only spin possibilities. Artificial intelligence can generate thousands of plausible translations based on statistical models, but without an external key, a bilingual text, a clear cultural link, these are merely sophisticated, elegant guesses. They are maps of a territory we cannot confirm exists. This is where the cold logic of mathematics meets the warm, messy intuition of human understanding. A computer can analyze the frequency of a glyph on the Phaistos Disc, but it cannot feel the cultural weight of a bee or a ship in Minoan society. It cannot intuit that a sequence of symbols on the Rohonc Codex might be structured around a heretical prayer because it understands the fear of religious persecution. The human element, the historian's grasp of trade routes, the anthropologist's insight into ritual, the linguist's feel for how languages evolve, remains irreplaceable. Decipherment becomes a collaboration, a dialogue between the quantifiable data and the qualitative story. The mathematician provides the possible structures, and the humanist asks, does this structure make sense for this people, in this place, at this time? It is a partnership that has solved great puzzles before, like the cracking of Linear B, but for these 20 unbroken scripts, that collaborative breakthrough remains just out of reach. They stand as a humbling reminder that some doors require not just a key, but also the wisdom to understand the lock. This relentless drive to unlock every silence reveals a deeper question about the quest itself. When we aim our powerful computers and scholarly attention at a script like Rongorongo or the Indus Valley symbols, we are not just solving a puzzle. We are seeking to reclaim a voice that history has silenced. For descendant communities, this work carries immense emotional and cultural weight. A successful decipherment can be an act of restorative justice, returning a chapter of history, a sense of identity, and a connection to ancestral knowledge that was violently erased or marginalized. It can transform an artifact in a museum case from a curious object of the other into a living document of one's own heritage. The potential for healing and reconnection is profound. Yet this power cuts both ways. The history of archaeology is in part a history of extraction. Artifacts have been removed from their lands, studied in distant institutions, and interpreted through foreign lenses, often without the consent or collaboration of the people for whom they hold the deepest meaning. Decipherment pursued as a purely technical, ownership-driven challenge risks repeating this pattern. It can become a colonial act where the intellectual triumph of cracking the code overshadows the living culture from which it sprang. The question of who has the right to interpret a lost culture's voice is not academic, it is ethical. True progress now means moving beyond seeing communities as mere subjects of study and toward partnering with them as essential guides and co-investigators. Their cultural memory, oral histories, and intuitive understanding provide context that no algorithm can ever compute. This collaborative path respects that some knowledge is not just information to be extracted, but a sacred trust to be approached with humility. This leads to a final, poignant consideration. In our zeal to know, we must also ask if some mysteries are meant to stay mysterious. For some cultures, certain forms of knowledge are intended only for specific initiates or hold their power precisely in their obscurity. The act of writing something down, of making it permanent, was itself a sacred or restricted act. To publicly decipher a ritual text or a funerary inscription could, in a very real sense, violate its original purpose and the spiritual boundaries of its creators. The silence itself can be a feature, not a bug. As we push the technological boundaries further, developing artificial intelligence capable of modeling every possible linguistic permutation, we must pair that capability with profound cultural sensitivity. The goal shifts from conquest to understanding, from claiming a secret to stewarding a legacy. These unbroken scripts are not trophies to be won. They are conversations waiting to be joined, and how we choose to listen, with respect, with partnership, with an acknowledgement of our own limitations, will determine whether we finally hear a voice or merely the sound of our own assumptions echoing in the silence. What ties these 20 silent scripts together is not just their age or their difficulty, but a fundamental human need. We are, at our core, a species of storytellers and puzzle solvers. An unbroken code is the ultimate locked door, and we cannot help but wonder what lies on the other side. Each of these mysteries represents a direct, tangible connection to a human mind that lived centuries or millennia ago. Someone carefully chose those symbols, pressed that stamp into clay, or carved that line into wood. They had a thought they deemed important enough to preserve, a message they fully expected someone else to understand. That expectation creates a bridge across time, and our inability to cross it feels like a personal failure, a broken conversation. These gaps in the historical record are not mere blank spaces, they are active absences that fuel our imagination. We look at the Voynich manuscript's impossible plants, and our minds race to fill the void with tales of lost alchemy or alien botany. We see the Rongorongo glyphs and hear the ghost of a chant we will never learn. The silence itself becomes a canvas for our deepest curiosities about who we were and how we thought. This collective enigma is also a profound teacher of humility. In an age where we can summon the world's knowledge to a device in our pocket and send machines to other planets, we must confront the fact that a small clay tablet from Crete or a knotted string from Peru can still defy our greatest efforts. Our most powerful computers, trained on the patterns of every known language, return only elegant guesses when faced with the Indus script. This is not a shortcoming of technology, but a reminder of the vast, beautiful complexity of the human experience. It shows us that knowledge is fragile, that entire systems of thought can retreat into a silence so complete that even our brightest tools cannot pierce it. These unbroken scripts stand as monuments to the limits of our understanding, whispering that the past will always hold secrets we have not yet earned the right to know. Yet within that humility lies a celebration of incredible diversity. These 20 puzzles, scattered across every continent and arising from isolated cultures, reveal a stunning truth. The impulse to create writing, to move from spoken word to permanent mark, was not a single brilliant invention that spread from one cradle of civilization. It was a spark that caught fire independently in different forms for different reasons all around the world. The stamped pictures of the Phaistos Disc, the knotted mathematics of the Quipu, the linear accounts of Linear A, and the pictorial syllabary of the Isthmian Script, each is a unique answer to the same universal problem. How do we make memory outlast the moment? How do we speak to the future? The variety of their solutions shows us the breathtaking breadth of human ingenuity. There is no one way to build a civilization, to organize a society, or to record its story. Ultimately, this collection of silent voices reframes history itself. It tells us that the story of humanity is not a finished book sitting neatly on a shelf, waiting to be read from beginning to end. It is more like an ancient, reused parchment, a palimpsest. Earlier writings were scraped away to make room for new text, but faint traces of the original message often remain, bleeding through the surface. These unbroken scripts are those underlying traces, the fragments of a first draft of history that was never fully erased. They are the whispers from a layer we are still learning to see. They do not simply ask to be solved, they urge us to keep looking, to keep questioning our assumptions, and to approach the past not with arrogance, but with a sense of wonder. For as long as these 20 codes remain unbroken, they hold a door open to discovery, reminding us that the most fascinating chapters of our shared story may still be waiting silently for their first reader. From the Indus Valley to Easter Island, we have traversed the globe and the ages, meeting 20 silent sentinels of the past. These unbroken scripts and codes are more than historical footnotes. They are profound reminders of the fragility of knowledge and the enduring mystery of human communication. A civilization can build monuments that scrape the sky, create art that stuns the senses, and engineer cities of breathtaking complexity. Yet its voice, the very medium of its daily thoughts and grandest dreams, can vanish into a silence so complete that centuries of effort cannot break it. This is the haunting lesson these puzzles teach us. Knowledge is not a permanent possession. It is a flickering flame, passed from hand to hand and generation to generation, and it can be extinguished by conflict, by hardship, or simply by the passage of too much time. The Rongorongo tablets are not just wood and glyphs. They are the ghost of a library, a collection of songs and stories that fell silent in a single, devastating generation. The Indus seals are not just carved stone. They are the unreadable labels on a lost world's filing cabinet, holding the names, transactions, and laws of a people we can only know from their bricks and beads. This fragility should not lead us to despair, but to a deeper appreciation. It makes every deciphered text, every recovered poem, every understood law tablet a minor miracle. It is a victory against the immense, silent gravity of forgetting. While we may never hear the voices behind the Voynich manuscript or the Indus seals, the very act of searching expands our understanding of human creativity and resilience. Our frustration at the locked door is itself a tribute to the minds that built it. We recognize the sophistication in the structure of the Rohonc Codex, the ingenuity in the stamped symbols of the Phaistos Disc, the mathematical elegance woven into the Quipus knots. The fact that we can see the intelligence in these systems, even if we cannot yet follow its logic, is a powerful connection. It tells us that the drive to create, to record, and to communicate is a universal thread in the human story, woven in wildly different patterns from Mexico to Crete to the Pacific. Each failed decipherment attempt is not a defeat. It is a process of listening more carefully, of learning the grammar of silence. It forces us to question our assumptions, to collaborate across disciplines and cultures, and to develop new tools for thought. In striving to hear these lost voices, we inevitably learn more about the incredible diversity of thought itself. Let these mysteries inspire not frustration, but awe for the vast, untold stories of our world. They are not empty spaces on a map, they are invitations. Each unbroken script is a door marked not with a keep-out sign, but with a question. What did you value? What did you fear? What made you laugh or pray or trade or govern? We may never get the full answer, but in leaning close to the door, we learn to ask better questions. They hold a space open for wonder in a world that often feels too known, reminding us that history is not a sealed book but an ongoing conversation, with chapters still waiting to be read. What other secrets lie buried, waiting for the right key, the right mind, the right moment of insight? The search continues, and it is a search that honors every silent sentinel of the past. If you found this journey into the unknown fascinating, share your thoughts on which script intrigues you most in the comments below, and subscribe for more deep dives into history's greatest puzzles. Keep wondering.